Namaskar and thank you for tuning in to the Economic Brief, the program that looks at key stories from the worlds of business, economy and finance and contextualizes them from an Indian and a global perspective. On the show today, how does a Trump second term sound for international trade and business in and through India? The German political tussle will likely cause a shift in the dynamics of the European Union. Pakistan is still under a cloud of smog. Its economy is hazy too. The hidden risks of Chinese investments in Peru, what's at play? First up, the emphatic victory of President-elect Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential elections has already begun affecting business interests across the world. Money that had moved out of the U.S. is now readying itself to either move back or into countries that are likely to be positively affected by Trump's tariff policies. India may stand to lose in some ways, but gain in most, according to experts. Here's the story. Business ties between India and the US are strong and growing. Bilateral trade is well over $100 billion. The US and India have also established various platforms, such as the India-US Strategic and Commercial Dialogue, to promote cooperation across technology, defense, renewable energy and infrastructure. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework has had mixed results so far. Launched in May 2022, the framework has made progress in supply chains, clean economy and fair economy, but has faced challenges on fair and resilient trade. This is likely to get tougher under the Trump administration. Trump's America First policy could lead to higher tariffs on goods from countries like India, which might affect the IPEF.
His other, agenda to make America great again, raise tariffs globally for all imports into the United States, to bring manufacturing back to America, maybe to build some walls, tariff walls around America, could impact Indian exports.
Trump's approach to the India-Pacific strategy is expected to focus on protecting American interests and countering China's influence. This could mean a shift in how the US engages with the IPEF and its member countries.
So unlike the Biden and the Democrats, he's not ideological. He's not ideologically wedded to certain positions. So with Trump, I feel what we should expect is more business-like dealings.
China has been actively strengthening its trade ties with developing countries and has been significantly increasing its economic presence in Latin and South America by investing in infrastructure projects, trade agreements, and providing loans and aid. China aims to counterbalance US influence in the region and secure resources and markets for its own economic growth.
It's good times for India, and I think there's no reason why we should at all be apprehensive. In fact, we will find ways and means of cooperating in taking the Indo-US relations forward, also India on the global high table forward.
Clearly, the growing geopolitical and economic shifts could foster closer ties between India and the US, benefiting India through increased trade, investment and strategic cooperation. Strengthening this partnership may also provide India with greater leverage in regional and international affairs and support its economic and technological advancements. The Economic Brief, DD India. Well, we are joined in the studio by Prasenjit Basu, senior economist who tracks the global economy. And on video link, we have Professor Gulshan Sachdeva from the School of International Studies, JNU, who has an expertise in Europe. Thank you both for being with us. Mr. Basu, at the end of the day, will India's economy benefit from a Trump presidency?
Yes, I think overall it certainly will. Trump, the key thing that he has proposed is the imposition of a 60% tariff on imports from China into the United States. In the first Trump presidency as well, there was a significant impact on China. The tariffs only began to be imposed in March 2018, and they covered only half of all of China's exports to the US. But even that has already had a huge impact because it's reduced the share of imports from China into the US from 22% of total imports in March 2018 to 13% now. And others have benefited from that.
Right.
India's share has gone up a little bit. It has continued to grow steadily. But India's share is only about 2.8% now. That can rise significantly further. The other beneficiaries have been Mexico and Vietnam, and a few other Asian countries have benefited to varying degrees. And this is going to continue. I mean, now he's going to impose 60% tariff on all imports from China. Even if it isn't 60%, even if it just is 30%,
Right.
there will be a huge diversion of US imports away from China to other countries. And you'll notice that over the last few years, Foxconn, for instance, has been
Right.
steadily moving some of its production away from China to India. And that process is going to accelerate.
Absolutely.
Also, I think in areas like textiles, garments, shoes, toys, these are areas that India has not really fully taken advantage of. There's a huge opportunity. China's share is 9 times India's in textiles and garments.
Okay.
If India can grab even 1/3 of that Chinese share, that will result in a huge increase in India's exports. So there are enormous opportunities. I think the broad direction will be positive. In addition,
Yes.
President Trump has said that he's going to encourage legitimate, legal immigration in the United
Which
States.
will also help India.
Which should help India. Now, of course, there is a small number of illegal immigrants from India, but most of the illegal immigrants come from Latin America, and interestingly, China has seen a huge increase in illegal. So, illegal is a problem for Trump. Legal is fine.
Absolutely.
And India will
Sure.
benefit
And
from
Mr. Dr. Sachdeva, you know, the EU making a trade pact with India. Do you see India, in fact, making more FTAs as a result in general?
Well, I mean, India and the European Union, as you know, we have been trying for many, many years. And at the moment when things are quite uncertain, in fact, in Europe, in the US, and in the global economy, and uncertain times are not really good for the trade partnerships or trade agreements, but the overall trends are positive, where in fact India has come very closer to the European Union, and they are also, since there is a lot of uncertainty about global trade with all kind of tariff talk from the US and the tension with China, so obviously European countries are looking more reliable partners, and I think India is definitely one of them. So we are working very closely. Negotiations are going on 3 different tracks. So hopefully things are happening positively in that direction, but it's not going to be in a hurry. It will take some time. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think the trends are not bad for India as far as working with Europe.
Mr. Basu, can the US actually become protectionist? I mean, after all, we can see that much of the world trade takes place in the US dollar, which is, after all, the reserve currency of the world.
Yeah, I mean, the US dollar will remain the reserve currency regardless of whether the US is protectionist or not. The key reason is that most global trade continues to be denominated in US dollars, and that will continue whether the US imposes tariffs or not. I mean, the purpose from Trump's perspective is to reduce the US trade deficit with the world, and there will be some positive impact from this for the US. But will the dollar remain the world's reserve currency? Absolutely, because there really is no alternative. The European economy is extremely weak. The largest European economy, Germany, has been in recession for the last 2 years.
We're going to talk about that in our next story.
Yeah. So that too. Now, so there isn't an alternative. The next biggest currency in the world is the yen, the Japanese yen, which has a very small relative role in global trade denominations, and then a very distant one is the renminbi, the Chinese renminbi. The problem with the Chinese renminbi and the Indian rupee is that neither of them is a fully convertible currency. So if you're not fully convertible, most central banks are going to be wary of holding a non-convertible currency as a reserve currency. So the reserve currency role will continue regardless.
Okay, let's move on to our next story. I had asked both of you to stay with us. The German economy is in recession for a second straight year, but the political uncertainty is adding to the economic woes. Germany is being described as the sick man of Europe once again. Let's look at this report. With the collapse of Germany's ruling coalition, the German economy is set for worse times. There is a multi-billion euro hole in the German budget, and the country is headed for its second year of contraction. A leadership vacuum in Germany is also one in Europe. This comes at a time when the EU hopes to set up a united response to possible tariff increases from Donald Trump's administration in its second term. Chancellor Scholz believes the EU has what it takes to support globalization.
The EU has competencies to do what is necessary, but we should all very clearly seek talks. My position on this issue is very, very clear. We do not support protectionism.
Chancellor Scholz fired his finance minister from the fiscally conservative Free Democrats for opposing his plan to suspend the debt brake again in order to raise more funds for Ukraine and the economy. That led to the FDP withdrawing from the government, leaving Scholz's SPD and the Greens. The Chancellor says he will hold a confidence vote in January, but has now called for a snap election in February.
Germany is a key actor in the European Union, and if this big player is kind of weakened, that could also have implications on the whole construction of the European Union. What we will see, perhaps, is kind of a shift of power within the European Union going to the Eastern European parts, to the Eastern European states. And so we can see kind of some changes, and this could be also kind of a long-lasting development we are going to face.
The opposition Conservatives are leading in nationwide polls. German industry is reeling from high costs and fierce Asian competition. Issues like aging infrastructure, underinvestment, and regulatory burdens have hit the economy. The transition away from Russian gas has impacted its manufacturing sector. Despite these challenges, Germany remains a key player in the European Union and continues to adapt to new economic realities. The Economic Brief, DD India. Well, our guests continue to be with us. Dr. Sachdeva, is Germany moving, the conservative way?
Well, in fact, for years, the Germany used to be one of the most stable economic and political country within Europe. Now, in the last 2 years, there are problems. And what you can really see that, the growth is the lowest among all G7 countries. Now, the politically, the traffic light, the coalition has collapsed. For years, Germany dependent on, cheap energy imports from Russia. And they also engaged very seriously with China economically, and also export markets to the US. Now, all these three things, whether you look at, the imports of energy from Germany, that's moving away from Russia, they have just moved away from this. There are problems with China now, because in many of the things which they were exporting to China, now Chinese themselves have become competitors, so they are actually moving up further. And there are also other tensions. Similarly, with the US, now all kind of tariff wall. In fact, even from the earlier Trump administration, all the tariffs which were imposed, now they were not even removed even during the Biden administration. So now they talk of even further, because there is also, US doesn't have only major trade deficit with China. They also have huge trade deficit also with Germany. And Germany is one of the major exporters. But so the for energy, if you look at within Germany, some of the major industries, look at chemicals, look at paper, look at metals. These are the industries which consume about 80% of commercial energy. So their prices have gone up. Many of them have actually stopped production. They are looking new options. So there are problems, and then of course on the immigration, all these issues are there because the demography is something very, very different. And now because, only thing what they need to do is they have to put more money, investments into infrastructure, they have to digitize the economy. For that, there was problems within the coalition, because still, in fact, you have a very highly skilled workforce in Germany. The debt levels are still low, but still politically they were not able to kind of figure out how they really move forward. So there are serious problems in German economy, but the fundamentals are still strong. But I think they have serious difficulties.
Okay.
And the the global geopolitics and the tensions with the U.S. uncertain policies are going to affect them badly.
Sure. Mr. Basu, German auto brands, they are clearly among the most elite, and they've been hit by the move towards EVs. So do you see a revival in regular fossil fuel brands for the international market, with the US now wanting to increase exports of oil?
Well, I think, first of all, the political situation in Germany, there's going to be a clear shift to the right. The CDU-CSU alliance is going to be on the ascendant, and the AfD, the so-called far right, is second in all the polls. That'll signify a significant political shift in Germany, and it'll be quite consistent with what President Trump wants. That's first thing. Now, with regard to the auto brands, I think it's important to understand that Volkswagen was the largest brand in China until just a few years ago. It was an early mover in the China market, and it had a huge share of China's market. On top of that, of course, within Germany itself and across the world, the two elite brands,
BMW and
Mercedes-Benz and BMW, are big players. Now, what was interesting is that all European brands, all global brands withdrew from Russia. Russia was not considered to be a very large market, but it was a significant market, not insignificant. And in Russia, the withdrawal of global brands, including particularly the German brands, has been replaced entirely by Chinese brands. And by the access that Chinese brands have to the Russian market has enabled them all to gain enormous scale economies, and that has reduced unit costs in China, particularly for EVs, electric vehicles, and they are now gaining market share in Europe. Right. So they're eating into Germany's market share across their home market in the European Union, and that is a significant problem. And this is not just cars, whether it's chemicals, steel, aluminium, in every sphere. China has massive overcapacity. Their domestic market is not growing. Domestic demand is extremely weak because they have overcapacity in real estate, overcapacity in every industrial sector, and they are trying to dump their excess capacity on the rest of the world.
That's the reason why the rest of the world also needs to put tariffs, perhaps.
Exactly.
So Dr. Sachdeva, how are the Eastern European states likely to be affected by German troubles?
Well, in fact, since the Germany is the main engine of European economy, and if that slows down, then obviously it's going to affect many other economies within Europe as well. But every country has its own way of dealing with the things, and every country is very nervous. But within the Eurozone, in fact, other economies are doing reasonably well, some of them. I mean, particularly Eastern European economies. Look at, Polish economy and other economies. They are doing pretty all right. So only thing is that, they were actually, some slowdown within the German economy is going to affect them, but, they are also trying to diversify into other areas. But overall, I don't think this is going to be such a serious matter as far as the other Eastern European countries are concerned, because they are doing reasonably well actually in the last few years.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Gulshan Sachdeva from the School of International Studies, JNU, and Mr. Prasenjit Basu, Senior Economist in the studio. Thank you for joining us and throwing light on these two stories. Our next story is air pollution in parts of Pakistan. It's brought life to a standstill there, and the struggling economy has been brought to its knees. The largely informal sector-driven economy has been hit by attempts to curb the pollution. Anu Kaushik puts things into perspective.
The air pollution in Pakistan's Punjab province continues to reach alarming levels. The province's capital Lahore became the world's most polluted city. Last week, Multan city recorded an air quality index of over 2000. An AQI above 300 is considered hazardous. Unsurprisingly, the pollution has led to a rise in respiratory illnesses. To combat the smog, authorities have introduced green lockdowns. Entries to parks, zoos and playgrounds have been banned, while malls must close by 8 p.m. Outdoor activities have been banned and those found flouting the rules will be penalized. But the lockdown has taken a toll on Pakistan's already ailing economy. Daily wage workers and those in the informal sector have been worst hit.
These restrictions on rickshaws and business could cause unemployment to increase. If you don't allow rickshaw drivers to drive, they will sit at home and become unemployed. The government and the economy will continue to run, but the poor rickshaw drivers will suffer.
The UNICEF has also criticized officials' decision to shut schools, saying that 60 million children's education will be impacted due to the lack of online classes.
Well, because the schools had to be closed, and not all schools are equipped. Actually, the majority of schools are not equipped to go online. Our latest data estimates is about 16 million children are impacted. Already, the country is facing a significant number of children out of school, and now those who are in school are now also impacted.
Experts have also discounted the green lockdown, saying that the government needs to push for clean energy for a long-term solution. The Lahore High Court has identified heavy traffic emissions as the main cause of the smog. Coal-fired brick kilns and stubble burning have also been major contributors.
So all the other things the government is doing, if it's not fixing the fuel, moving to better electricity, renewable electricity, and capturing and reducing industrial emissions, it's not going to amount to anything, and it will only continue to get worse.
The air pollution has also led to a reduced visibility, forcing closure of major roads. The Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, time to take your leave, but we're going to leave you with this story. In Peru, a major port development backed by Chinese investment is set to transform the country's economy and trade routes. But experts are warning that such projects come with hidden risks. The rising debt burden that some countries face after similar Chinese-backed ventures could soon catch up with Peru. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us more.
In the coastal town of Chance, Peru is building a megaport with Chinese financing, making it the first Chinese port in South America. The project features 15 piers and has a total investment of $3.5 billion. The project is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, aiming to improve trade routes between Peru and Asia. According to the government, the port will help Peru become the Singapore of Latin America.
This is a port facility that, even though it's owned jointly by China and a mining company, at no time does that imply any kind of infringement of sovereignty. This is Peruvian territory. It is and will remain so. So when a ship wants to approach here, it will follow all the protocols in place.
Officials say it will create jobs and boost businesses, but locals doubt these claims.
But how is the sport itself going to benefit us? At most 700 direct jobs will be created. What we are going to see is total destruction with the millions of trucks that are going to come. Over 4,000 trucks to fall a ship.
It's going to be a little bit more difficult. I mean, the transportation that we are going to have is motorized and we used to pedal our boats.
Experts warn that Peru may face a situation similar to countries like Sri Lanka, Zambia, and Pakistan, which have fallen into China's debt trap. In all these cases, massive loans for infrastructure projects left them struggling to repay debts, leading to economic crisis. While the megaport project promises growth, the growing debt burden could have hidden costs. Like other countries in Chinese debt trap, Peru could face inflation, unemployment, and cuts to public services if it can't manage its loan effectively. Diptanshu Kashyap reports for the Economic Brief, DD India.